My name is Dr. Manisha Gupta and I am Assistant Professor in Noida Institute of Engineering Technology in Greater Noida in MBA department, and I welcome you in our business research method class. And in today's session we are going to discuss about the mechanism of the report writing. So, these will be the table of the content which we are going to study in today's session. So, first of all, the interpretation and report writing. You have done the research, but at the end how you are going to represent our research. So, it is a very important step. After collecting and analyzing the data, the researcher has to accomplish the task of the drawing the inference followed by the report writing. So, first of all they have to draw the inference. Inference means what our result is interpreting, what it is saying. Suppose you said that the 80% of the people are satisfied. So, what do you mean by the 80% of the satisfied people? And your results showing that the 83% is highly satisfied, 2% is dissatisfied. So, what that means? So, this is the inference we drawn from our study, and first of all we draw the inference, then we start writing the report, and this has to be done very carefully, otherwise the misleading conclusion can be drawn and the whole purpose of the research may be will not be fulfilled. Means if you draw the wrong conclusion, then your whole work will be affected, and it is only through the interpretation that the researcher can explore the relation and process, and that underline his finding. In case of the hypothesis testing, if the hypotheses are tested and they upheld the several times, the researcher may arrive at a generalization, but in case the researcher has no hypothesis to state, then he would try to explain his finding on the basis of the some theory. Now, the meaning of the interpretation. So, what do you mean by the interpretation? The interpretation refers the task of drawing inference from the collected fact after the analysis, or if you are conducting the experiment, then after conducting the experimental study. In fact, the search for the broader meaning of the research finding. There the task of the interpretation has the two major aspects. Means the interpretation has the two major aspects, means why we do the interpretation in our study. First is the effort to establish the continuity in research through linking the result, means linking the result of the given study with those of the another, means you are trying to make the relation between the result of your study and with the others. You are comparing that what is happening in your study and what is happening in the someone else's study. The next reason is establishment of the some explanatory concept, means if you take the some problem in your study, then your interpretation may result that why this problem is occurred. So, it will give you the some explanatory concepts. In the one sense, the interpretation is concerned with the relationship between the collected data, and particularly it is for the overlapping analysis, and interpretation also extend beyond the data of the study to include the result of the other research theory and hypothesis. So, why do we do the interpretation? So, the reason behind the interpretation is that it is so the interpretation the researcher can well understand the abstract principle that work beneath his finding, means what are the principle because of which our finding occur. Then the interpretation lead to the establishment of the explanatory concept, that is why we have to interpret the study. The other reason is researcher can better appreciate only through the interpretation why his finding and what they are, and can made the other to understand the real significance of his study. And through this you cannot just comparing it, you cannot just showing your finding, you can also helping other to make them understand that what is your finding and what does it mean. The other reason is the interpretation of the finding of the exploratory research study often the result into the hypothesis for the experimental research. Sometimes your study, your result may become the basis of the someone else's study, through which someone else is trying to derive the hypothesis from it. They will conduct the experiment and such as and they can also do the more study or more result basis of on your interpretation. Next is, what are the techniques of the interpretation? The techniques of the interpretation, the task of the interpretation is not easy, rather than it required the great skill, which is basically the different from the what is the skill is required in the conducting the study. And the interpretation is basically art that one learn through the practice and principle, and the researcher may at the time seek the guidance from the expert to accomplish the task of the interpretation. And basically the technique of the interpretation often involve the following steps. It involves the few steps in the interpretation. The first is, the researcher must give the reasonable explanation of the relation which he has founded. Means, suppose if you have founded the relationship between the two variables, then you have to explain why this relationship occur. Suppose you are conducting the study on the customer satisfaction towards a mobile phone, and you find out that the customer is not satisfied with that particular brand. So, you have to find out the reason why they are not satisfied, what are the basic or the foundation for that, and he must interpret the line of the relationship in terms of the underlying process, and must try to find out the thread of the uniformity that lies under the surface layer of his diversified research and finding. Then the next step is, extrinsic information, if collected during the study, must be considered while interpreting the final result. Means, you have to consider, if you have taken some information from outside your study, then you also consider it at the time of analysis, and it is for because it may be proved to be the key factor in the understanding and the problem under consider. So, you have to consider the extraneous information if you have taken, because it may be going to affect your study. After that, what we have to do? What are the technique in next step? That it is advisable before embarking upon the final interpretation to consult someone who has more information or more insight, and who is more frank, more honest, or that person maybe have the expert in that field. So, before you interpreting or the making the final interpretation, you have to consult with the others also. In the next step, the researcher must accomplish the task of the interpretation only after considering all the relevant factor affecting the problem and avoid the false generalization, and he must be in no hurry. Means, when he is interpreting the result, he should not be in any type of the hurry while interpreting the study, and quite often for the conclusion which appear to be all right at the beginning, but it may not be accurate. So, when you try to make the interpretation of the study, you have to consider all the factors. Like, if you are conducting the study in the open environment, in that situation there may be the many factors which is going to affect your study. Take an example of the present situation. We have seen that in the COVID-19 situation, that the many industries are suffer. So, when you are conducting the study on their performance, in that situation you have to consider this point, because it is the extraordinary condition. So, in this sense, whenever you are conducting the study, you have to consider the all factors that may affect your study. Now, why do have to we have completed with the interpretation. Now, we move to the report writing. Why do we need to write a report? What is the significance of report writing? So, first of all, research report is considered as a major component of this research and the study for the researcher task, and remain incomplete till you cannot generate a report, because it present, and your report may be in presentation form or in a written form, As a matter of fact, even the most brilliant hypothesis and highly well designed and conducted the research study and the most striking generalization in the finding are the little value less they are effectively communicated to the other. Why do you have to write a report? What is the significance of the writing the report? The most important significance of the writing the report is that you have to communicate to the other by your reports, and it is also help you to summarize your all the work in a one place. You are writing the every single thing about what you have conducted or the done in your study. Basically, if we say the purpose of the research is not served until analysis people know about your study. If the people know about your study, then only your study will be relevant, because it is going to affect the others, or it is going to help the other to understand what is happened. Or you can say, suppose like the market situation is going down and you have conducted the study. So, in that situation your result will be the beneficial of the many companies which were in that situation in that particular environment. So, your study helped the other to understand the situation and conduct more further study. So, we talk about the different step in the report writing. What are the most important steps in the report writing? So, the steps are the logical analysis of the subject matter, preparation of the final outline, preparation of the rough draft, rewriting and polishing your research, then the preparation of the final bibliography, and at the end writing the final draft. We will see one by one all these topic. In the first is your logical analysis of the subject matter. Whatever the content or topic you have taken, the first step is primary concerned with the development of the subject, which you can do in a two ways. First is your by the logical consideration, means what is a logically right, or you can go by chronologically, means what is come first, or you can go from the past to present, or you can go from present to past. You can start your study with the most recent thing to move to the what is happened in the past. So, it is basically depend upon the type and the condition. The basically and the chronological development is basically based on the connection of the sequence from the time or occurrence. If we talk about the technology development, you can easily see that the what is how the chronological development or the time has affected. If you take an example of the one single bike, car or mobile phone, so you have seen the how it has changed. In the same way, we talk about the management concept, current practices is also changed from past to present. So, you can either go with the logical consideration or you can go by chronology. Next step is preparation of the final outline. In this step, what we have to do? Writing the research report. Outlines are the framework upon which the long written work are constructed. In this step, you have to just make the outline of your study. So, what is your study? Why we are going, why we have done the study, and what is basically it is about the framework or the what is the design of our study. So, in this step you basically prepare the outline of the study. They are and the aid to the logical organization of the material and reminder of the point to be stressed in the report. If you make the framework, then it help you that what point you have to stress and what point you do not have to stress, where you have to stress more and where you have to stress less. Then preparation of the rough draft. After making the outline, you have start working on it and prepare. In the first draft, you prepare the one rough draft, and this follow the logical analysis of the subject and preparation of the final outline, such as the step is utmost important for the researchers now sit to write down what he has done in the context of his research study. So, you prepare the rough draft. After that, what we have to do? After preparing the rough draft, you, because it is basically the rough draft, you have just to put the information. In this step, you have to start rewriting or the polishing your rough draft into the final report. So, in this step what is happened that, and this is step is happened to be most difficult part of the all formal writing, because usually this step require more time than the writing of the rough draft, because you have to go through with the every single detail in this step, and you are carefully revising, mark the difference between the mediocre and the good piece of the writing, and while you are rewriting in the polishing, one should check the report for the weakness of the logical development or the presentation, and at the end the researcher should also see whether or not the material is in presentation has the unity or the coherence or not, means your all the material or the content in the study have is according to your objective or not, or all the information is moving the one single direction or not. In the next step, the preparation of the final bibliography, and in this step you start writing the bibliography. And what is the bibliography? Bibliography is basically which generate the upper hand of the research report, means from where we have taken the information content, like you have used some book or a website or any type of the report, and this is basically give you the some upper hand if you have used more recent or more advanced or the more acknowledged report. And it is basically divided into the multiple parts, like you put the books on one side, journals on one side, the websites on the one side, the government report should be on other side. So, it will give you the better look for your study, and at the end you are writing the final draft. And in this step is basically the final draft should be written in the concise with the objective style and the simple language, avoiding the any vague expression such as it seems, there may be. So, you have to avoid the vague language in your study, and also in the final draft researcher must avoid the abstracted technology or the any type of the technical jargon, so that your study will be applicable or the people can read it, understand it. If you do not use any do not to use the technical jargon or the abstract technology in your study. Now, the research report should not be dull, means whatever you are writing should not be in a very dull format. It is like it gives the people to enthusiasm to read more and more in your report, so that they can complete your report and understand. And it should be must to the report should be for the enthusiast people and maintain the interest, like in the stories you have to the writer try to retain the interest of the reader. In that way we also have to, when you are writing the report, you have to make the reader to read more and more, and so that it should not be in the very dull language, and it should be such that they create interest in the people to read your report. And it must be remembered that the every report should be an attempt to solve some intellectual problem and must contribute to the some solution to the problem and must add it to the knowledge, and both the researcher and also the reader will get the benefit from this. Now, we come to the what is the layout of the research report. What is basically the layout? So, anybody who is reading the research report must necessarily be conveyed enough about the study, so that he can place it in the general scientific context to judge the advocacy of the method and thus form an opinion about the serious the finding to be taken. And for this purpose there need to be the proper layout of your report. The layout of the report is mean that the what research report should contain, and in this it is divided into three parts. First is preliminary pages, second is your main text, and third part is your ending matter. So, what is in your preliminary pages? In the preliminary pages is like it is carried out like the topic of the study, date, acknowledgement, preface, forward, or it is like the table of content, a list of the figures, list of the table, illustration, that the decision maker or the anybody can be interested in the reading the report and can be easily locate the what information they are trying to read by using or by seeing the preliminary pages. Then move to the main body. In the main body, main text, the reporter should have the following section. First is introduction, second is statement, finding, recommendation, then result, and then implication drawn from the result, and at the end summary. So, what we do in introduction? In introduction, the purpose of the introduction is to introduce the research project to the reader, means the people should understand the what is about this, why we have make the report, why we conduct the study, what is this, what is the reason behind it, and what is the total statement in it. And this is basically contain the clear statement of the objective of the study. It takes a few parts, like your objective of the study should be there, your hypothesis should be there, your literature review will be there, and basically it gives you the enough background so that the reader can make a clear to the reader, means it give basically to give the background for the reader to understand that why the problem was considered worth of investigating, means why we conducted this study. And a brief summary of the other relevant research may also be stated so that the present study can be seen in this context. And this basically contains hypothesis of the study, definition of the major concept, and should also explicitly state that the introduction of the report. In next part, it is for the statement, finding, and recommendation. In the introduction, you also give the review of literature in your study, objective, your hypothesis will be in your introduction part. Then when you move to the statement and the finding, after introduction, the researcher report must contain the statement, finding, recommendation in the non-technical language so that anyone can easily understand it. And if the finding happen to be the extensive at the point, then you should put the summarizing it, means if there is extensive finding, then we have to summarize those finding into the minimum words, and after that you have to write the results. The results is the detailed presentation of the finding of the study with the supporting data in the form of the table, charts together with the validity of the result in this context, and the step of the writing the main context of the report. And the results section the results section of the report should be contain the statistical summary and the reduction of the data rather than the raw data. And after that, there is a implication of the result, means what is the major implication, and toward the end, the main context, the research should again put down the result of his research clearly and precisely, and it should state that the implication that flow from the result of the study. And basically the general reader is interested in the implication of the study, means what is it is going to interpret, means how we are going to use this result. And basically the three aspects should be stated. First is the statement of the inference drawn from the present study, which may be expected to apply in the similar circumstances in some other situation. Next is the condition of the present study, which is why the limit the extent of legitimate generalization or the inference drawn from the study. And next is the relevant question that still remain answered or the new question raised by the study along with the suggestion of the kind of the research which provide the answer. Now you have to write the summary in the main part, and it is become the customary to conclude the research report in the very brief summary. And after the main body, there is a third part is end matter, and in the end matter what we have put like our appendix, list of the respected all the technical data, and if you have used a questionnaire, you are going to attach it, then the bibliography, these type of the thing we put in the end matter. Thank you everyone. This is all for the day, but we will continue the report writing in the next session also.